What's up, everybody? On today's video, we have what some people are calling the defense's best cross-examination, at least the end of it, and the Commonwealth's best witness overall. Do we agree? Do we disagree? We're going to hit the highlights. We're going to answer questions. We're going to talk about all of it next. But first, hit that like button. It was an eventful day in court today again, and it's always, from somebody who's trying to, write down some timestamps of some highlights, some things we can learn from, some evidence that's being presented, connecting dots, seeing how the lawyers are making arguments. When the lawyers do certain things for certain reasons that I like to point out strategically, which I think we had some of that today as well. It's awesome to have. It's been a struggle for me to get these and keep these videos right around an hour, and tonight's going to be no different. It is going to be a little over an hour. But what I think we're going to do is I think we're going to save the two Aruba witnesses for tomorrow. There's no court tomorrow, but we're still going to be talking Karen Read tomorrow and probably something else. But I think we're going to save those for tomorrow so we can really dive in to Jen McCabe and Carrie Roberts. There was so much made of their testimony today that I have found it that there is plenty to talk about. Probably won't even be able to keep it to an hour just talking about those two witnesses. But so many people had questions about interesting parts of their testimony, especially obviously that the defense did not cross-examine Carrie Roberts. I've got some thoughts on why. Some people wrote me as to what their reasons why, and I think those are interesting. But I think from a strategic point of view, why I would pass on cross-examination potentially. I'm not saying I would. I actually don't think I would. I think I would have cross-examined her. But I think I have an idea as to why the defense may have done that. But first and most importantly, we're going to start with the witness that started the day, which was, in fact, Jen McCabe. And Jen McCabe has been on the stand, I think, over a 3-day span so far. She finally gets off the stand today, but not before they get into what I think is potentially the most damning testimony for the Commonwealth. I'm not going to say damning to the McCabes necessarily, but it definitely is damning to the Commonwealth if the defense's theory is a cover-up and there are certain Google searches going out. And people asked, why didn't Alan Jackson talk about this yesterday? My guess was he was going to end with it, and that's exactly what happened. You want to end with a bang, and he ended with a bang. If you ask me, getting into those Google searches, but we're going to wait and handle those in turn. First, we're going to talk about the fact that Jen McCabe wanted to talk about the harassment more. She wanted to make sure the jury felt it and heard it. We've heard other witnesses talk about it. I personally think the most effective discussion about the harassment came from Jen McCabe's daughter, Allie McCabe. She was choked up. She cried. I felt bad for her. She's a young lady. And, whatever. If people want to say she's covering something up or involved, whatever, I feel bad if people feel like their lives are being ruined and they're being harassed and things like that. I get that people are saying it's not harassment, but I'll just tell you, from both sides, and from nobody famous that I'm aware of, I'm getting heat, right? And I see some people coming to my aid in the messages saying, relax. You're obviously not listening to his videos if you think this or that or whatever. And while that's very much appreciated, I think it's obvious to everybody that there's some stuff going around in this case. There's some hate being thrown around in this case, and different people have different definitions of harassment. But Jennifer McCabe absolutely wanted this jury to know as much as they possibly could. And the judge has absolutely ruled this door is open. And she's saying it's like wide open. And she talks about it being open again throughout this process, when in my opinion, most of what they're talking about is more connected to Lally's questions and evidence than it is what the defense is asking them, because the defense has been very careful about their questions and what exactly they should and shouldn't ask to make sure they don't open the door. So let's listen to this exchange between her and Alan Jackson, which, again, gets heated.
Myself with Carrie Roberts dropping her daughter off. There was no involvement of Mike Blank on this day.
Have you been to the home, the personal residence of any other police officer involved in this case? Ever?
Yes.
Tell me who.
Kevin Albert.
Who else?
I went to Elizabeth Proctor, the wife of Michael Proctor's house.
Who does Elizabeth Proctor live with?
Michael Proctor.
So you actually went to Michael Proctor's personal residence.
I did, yes.
That was in September of what year?
23. I went over.
23.
Yes.
So that seems like it's going to be a point for the defense, but then he asks a question. And this is, for the first time, something that could potentially lead to the defense opening the door for some explanation. And if they're going to do it, the judge is going to let him. To this point, I felt like mostly they have been very carefully crafted questions and they have not opened the door. And that Lally Moore has asked about the questions that would potentially get into this information. But the defense is about to ask, why did you go to Trooper Proctor's house? And it seems like she was ready for that question, and this was kind of a tee up.
Why'd you go to Michael Proctor's house in September of 2023?
I met Elizabeth Proctor in approximately July or August of 2023. We are two mothers that are being viciously terrorized and harassed by social media. Things that were stated in this courtroom and allegations that were made have torn our lives upside down. We receive hate letters saying that they hope things.
Why? I know you want to give a narrative.
She gets to answer this, Mr. Jackson. The door's open.
Your Honor, she should answer the question why she went to the house as opposed to the narrative behind her motivation.
I mean, why you do something is kind of your motivation to do that, right? I get what he's doing. He's trying to walk it back. He doesn't want her to give this answer. And that's the other thing is people are like, this answer is great for Karen Read. He should absolutely get into it. Let's argue about it. I am more convinced than ever after today, Alan Jackson did not want to get into the harassment back and forth. And I agree with him. I would not want to get into it either. Whether it's true, whether it's not, if there's a single juror who really has a problem with how the defense attorneys are asking questions or feels bad for these witnesses, this is just going to make them double and triple down. And I think it's at this point unknown where any juror lies. So if there is sympathy, which shouldn't be part of this trial, if there is sympathy coming for these witnesses, that's not good for Karen Read, obviously. So he does it, and they're about to spar on this harassment issue. And I posted it on Twitter, and most people think, you know, at best it was neutral for Karen Read, but that the more they talk about the harassment, I don't think it's a great thing for Karen Read. But let's hear Jen McCabe really dig in.
It sounds to me like she's explaining why she went to the house. The door was open, Mr.
Go
Jackson.
ahead.
We receive letters, we receive emails, we receive calls. People drive by our house. There was a rolling rally outside of my house where people just screamed at us. They take pictures of our children. They took a picture of my daughter and put semen on it and said property of some named blogger that I think the defense is very familiar with. So,
I mean, I got to be honest. I got a daughter. That would make my blood boil. The jury does not, and again, I'm coming into this case. I don't know what happened before. I don't know. I'm starting to understand why people are pointing the finger at other people, things like that. But to hear that those types of pictures are being made about her daughter, if you don't know her and you don't know the witnesses in this case, I think your average person would feel bad about her. Most people that are saying, I have no sympathy for her, good, I'm glad, all she cares about is herself, I think it's probably because they know more about her than what's come out in court. That's my opinion. Okay. That's my opinion. But I do think that there's going to be at least one or two jurors that feels bad for her after hearing all of this. And I'm not saying she's telling the truth, right? I have no idea what's happening. But if you're hearing this and you don't know her, I think some amount of sympathy is coming.
that is why myself and Elizabeth Proctor got together. Michael Proctor was not home. We are two mothers trying to get through the unthinkable together.
So you were upset about the public outrage concerning your family's involvement in the death of John O'Keefe.
I was outraged because I am a state witness that is being tortured because of lies.
Because of public outrage concerning your family's involvement in the death of a police officer, correct?
No, it's a social media witch hunt.
I see. So you decided that the best way for you to address that angst that you were feeling is to go to the lead investigator's home, personal home, in this case, correct?
I went to visit Elizabeth Proctor. Michael Proctor was not home.
So just like when you went to when you went to Sergeant Lent's house and the only person you met with was his wife, when you went to Michael Proctor's house, your claim is the only person you met with was his wife.
I personally did not go to Mike Lanks. It was not Jen going to Michael Lanks. It was Kerry Roberts dropping her daughter off.
I did personally go to Mike Lanks. I mean, that's the point is I get what she's trying to say, but as far as the defense's narrative, going to Lanks' house and going to Proctor's house fits right in. But from her narrative and from her side, both sides are trying to get and we're calling it a narrative. And my reason for using narrative is because that's what's been thrown around so much in this trial, but it's really what they believe happened. Each side is talking about and pushing the story they believe to be true or want to be true, or whatever verbiage you want to use. The fact that she went to two of the investigating officers' house is not great for the Commonwealth.
And I happened to be in the car with her. Elizabeth Proctor, I met with because we couldn't take the torture any longer.
And you were later asked about this unrecorded visit at Trooper Proctor's home by Massachusetts State Police, correct?
Can you remind me?
Sure. Did you have a conversation with a trooper by the name of Tully, who interviewed you specifically about your contact with Michael Proctor?
Could I see the report to refresh my memory?
Do you not remember having a conversation with Trooper Tully?
I've had many conversations.
So they go through, like, I don't know, a bunch of calls, a ton of calls between her and Proctor. And she's like, yeah, okay, I did talk to him. Yes, he interviewed me, the day after or whatever this all happened. And then we get into Trooper Tully's report, which says something kind of unimaginable.
There are blue tabs. You can look at those blue tabs and then tell me when you take a look at those.
Whoops. I think I got to jump ahead a little further because they go through I mean a bunch of calls, not one or two calls, a bunch of calls between her and Proctor. We know they've spoken. She's been to his house. They know each other at this point. He did the initial interview with her, but somehow this made it into a report.
Waking up, and I was tied upstairs for a while. I'm not sure when or how long he was there.
But your memory is clear that not only did you meet Trooper Proctor on that day, you had a full conversation with him. It was in your house, that was in your kitchen, in your dining room, and another witness was interviewed by Trooper Proctor in your home as well.
Correct.
And then you had multiple conversations with him in January on that day, the day after, and the day after that. You've already seen those records.
Yes, correct.
Then in either September or October, you were interviewed by Lieutenant Tully. That's the report that you've already seen.
Correct.
And in that interview, you were asked specifically whether or not you had a relationship with Trooper Proctor and when that relationship started, correct?
Correct.
And you said, quote, you had never met Elizabeth Proctor or Michael Proctor prior to September 2023, correct?
I did not say that.
So yet again, this is another example of a trooper completely getting it wrong. Is that right?
Objection.
Sustained, ask it differently.
So there's a quote in this report, I think Tully, that says she said she never met Trooper Proctor until I think it was September of 2023. She's like, absolutely not. He's like, so once again, a report seems to be doctored in a way that tries to distance the McCabe's and the Alberts from this investigation and from this case.
In your view, did Lieutenant Tully get your statement wrong that you had never met Trooper Proctor before September of 2023?
Objection.
Is that true or is that wrong?
Lieutenant Tully knew I met Proctor prior to that because Proctor was the one who did the initial interview on January 29th.
Does it make you wonder why he wrote in his statement, quote, you have
Objection,
never
Your
met Elizabeth Proctor or Michael Proctor prior to September 2023?
So the objection sustained.
Makes me wonder why.
If you indicated that you had never met Trooper Proctor before September of 2023, that would be a false statement, correct?
Objection.
You can answer that, Ms. McCabe.
I met Proctor January 29th. It's
A false
everywhere.
statement. If you said it, would it have been false? That's all I'm asking.
January 29th is the day after or day of, depending on if it was, I guess everybody believes it was past 12 o'clock. So the day of the incident, she met him. So to say she never met him or his wife, she's like, everybody knew that. It's like, then how the heck does it get in this guy's report?
Before September of 2023, that would be a false statement, correct?
Objection.
You can answer that, Ms. McCabe.
I met Proctor January 29th. It's
A false
everywhere.
statement. If you said it, would it have been false? That's all I'm asking.
Yes.
And again, that's on the trooper. That's not on Jen McCabe, right? The trooper's the one that screwed that up. I see some comments in here about the harassment. Let's run through them real quick. If I'm the prosecution, I don't know that I want the jury knowing the general public is calling my witnesses murders. 100% agree. And you know what else I wouldn't want? I wouldn't want jurors, just like we heard in the Lori Vallow juror interview. If you haven't watched that, go check it out. We don't want jurors thinking that there's pressure, if I'm the Commonwealth, on the state's witnesses, on the Commonwealth's witnesses, or that there's a general public pressure that this needs to be a not guilty verdict. You shouldn't want that to come in the juror's head if you're the Commonwealth. Ashley, does Jen remind you of Amber Heard? No. I don't get those vibes. If some people do, no, that did not pop into my head. Brianna, I don't think the jury will care about the harassment, especially with what we've seen so far. People are outraged for a reason. Potentially, maybe more than any other case, am I interested to hear the jury talk about this afterwards if they do. Denise, thank you, Peter, for explaining both sides fairly. I've learned so much from you. Thank you for all you do. Wit is going to win trivia night tonight. I wish it was trivia. It is not trivia. The members only live is going to be, John's been practicing, so it's not really fair, but we'll save that for later. Donna, I think there was establishment from some witness. There is some stuff they said that isn't in police reports, but it's not just some stuff they said that's not in police reports, but officers quoting material facts about whether or not there's corruption and whether or not these people all know the investigating officers. And he misquotes her, which would further the theory that there's some kind of cover up here. Jason said, wouldn't staying away from the highly involved people in the case maybe stop people from thinking corruption's going on? This is what we call staying away from even the appearance of impropriety, Jason, to me. Sandy D, this is immature and disgusting behavior that ends up saying more about the people harassing the witness than it does about the families. That harassment is never warranted. I don't think any witnesses should be harassed, period. Period. I think you can fight for justice. I think we fight for the right causes. I think we try to produce change. We try to catch criminals. We try to get criminals to get the appropriate punishment through the legal system. I think there are systems in place, and I don't think they're always perfect, obviously. Rebecca, thank you for gifting 10 memberships. The members only live for May is at 8:30 tonight, so we got to be done by then.
On January 29th, in the early morning hours, I want to take you all the way back to 1:30, 1:45 a.m. when you left 34 Fairview on the 29th. After you dropped off the girls, where did you and Matt McCabe go?
We came home.
After you got home, you indicated that you went upstairs, correct?
Correct.
After you went upstairs, you indicated that you got on the phone.
Correct.
On your cell phone, correct? After you got on your cell phone, you indicated that you started searching for something.
Correct.
So if there's GPS, that you've seen the forensic extraction or part of it, correct?
Which one are you referring to?
Your phone. The forensic extraction of your phone.
I saw what you showed me yesterday from Celebrate.
That's what I mean.
Okay. I'm
right, part of it.
I saw, the phone calls. Yes.
Okay. You're aware that that extraction shows that you got home after 2 a.m. or so that would be generally correct.
Correct.
The Celebrate extraction shows from your Apple Health data that you actually went up a set of stairs. That would be accurate, correct?
Accurate.
The Celebrate data shows that you actually logged into your phone. You logged in either Face ID or a passcode, opened up the phone. That would be accurate.
Correct.
The Celebrate data shows that you were engaging with an app called Safari to engage some Google searches, correct?
Yes.
That would be generally accurate as well, correct?
Yes.
So after you opened up Safari, you indicated that you Google searched something about Ozone basketball. Is that right?
Yes.
That was sometime after 2 a.m., right?
Yes.
What was so important about Ozone basketball at 2 a.m. that it couldn't wait until the morning? Why did you search it then?
Well, first I was home, I was wide awake, and I had been texting about a basketball chat, and basketball was clearly on my mind. My daughter had been invited to join a team. I didn't know much about the team, so I just was like Googling to see, because the woman who had given my daughter the offer had wanted an answer.
So I got to be honest, like that seems totally normal. I don't know why I Google random crap at 2 o'clock in the morning when I can't sleep. Mine is probably like, what is the line for the Mavericks and Timberwolves game tomorrow? What do they think Luka Doncic is going to score? The new basketball hoop I'm looking at that somebody saw, they said they saw in a search from the Scotty Scheffler. It's like I Google random crap all the time late at night. I'm not sure where they were going with that, but I found that somewhat believable. Caitlin said, curious what your opinions are about the order of these two witnesses. I found Carrie's testimony much more credible, but not sure that helps the Commonwealth. So unpopular opinion for some people in the chat. I know they're not going to like this. I thought Jen McCabe's direct was fine. I thought her cross was very important for the defense and damning to the Commonwealth, but I thought her direct was fine. And I also thought that Carrie Roberts was fine for the Commonwealth. I thought potentially these two witnesses, while the Commonwealth was asking them questions, were better than the vast majority of the other witnesses the Commonwealth called. So I don't know why they called them in this order.
So you say that basketball was on your mind, correct?
Yes.
Was there anything else on your mind in the early morning hour time frame?
Don't believe so.
Mr. Cave, if you wanted to know in general how long it takes for a human being to pass away because of exposure to extreme temperatures, right?
So before we get into that Google search, Bob Cousins makes a good point here. It's to show she was using her phone, right? Because we're going to talk about how she says, it was accidental and all this stuff happened, but they're showing she was wide awake, right? They've got testimony now and evidence that she was wide awake and searching stuff on her phone. Great point, Bob.
You wanted to know the answer to that. What would you Google search? What phrase would you use?
I'm not sure. All I recall is what the defendant asked me to Google in the morning.
If you wanted to know, I'm asking a different question.
Mhm.
Not
If
what
you-
he's asking. And this is, again, parts of her testimony where I think Alan Jackson gets incredibly frustrated, but as just a watcher and as a potential juror that would never make it on this jury, but a lot of you guys that aren't lawyers have a lot better chance of making it on the jury, not if you know a lot about this case, of course, but this does not make a witness look good. When it's like, ma'am, you've talked about the harassment. You've talked about the high profile nature of this case. Are you being honest and being serious that you don't know what the whole Google search is that you asked and you don't know the language you asked, ma'am? Are you being serious? Because it seems like you're just trying to be difficult. That's what I felt watching this. If she would have just said, how long to die in the cold? I would have been like, okay, all right, next question. Let's see what else it is. I wouldn't automatically condemn her for that. She can still have the argument about the different times, but this back and forth, again, there's parts of the indications it starts to lose credibility during cross when you do stuff like this. And maybe it doesn't seem as damning or as bad to some people, but to me, this was frustrating.
personally wanted to know, how long does it take for a person to die of exposure due to extreme temperatures? What would you put in? What phrase would you use?
Objection.
Sustained.
Well, we don't have to guess at the phrase that you would use if you wanted to know something about dying of hypothermia, do we? Did you actually Google search it?
Objection.
Sustained. Ask that differently, please.
Did you, in fact, use a phrase to Google search how long it takes for someone to die of extreme temperatures?
I did in the morning at the request of your client.
And what phrase did you use?
I'm not sure.
Really?
Correct. I was.
After 2.5 years of this, you don't know the phrase that you used?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
There's so many lies and
There's no
misconceptions
question.
on social media.
Question.
Oh, I apologize.
And again, she's clearly trying to force that in. And this is another problem with the judge, like in front of the jury saying the door is open, in front of the witness saying the door is open. It sounds like Jen McCabe thinks like, I can try to force this testimony in as much as possible. And she is going to try to do it again and again. And it starts to lose its luster a bit when I hear it over and over again, which is why, again, I think the one snippet that Allie McCabe said was the best explanation of the harassment so far.
Are you telling me you don't remember what Google search you put in?
Karen was screaming. My hands were shaking. And she was saying, Google hypothermia. How long does it take to die in the cold?
And what phrase did you put in your phone? I'm just asking you to say it.
Why don't you show me it?
You literally don't remember?
Again, she was screaming, Google hypothermia. How long does it take to die in the cold?
How about,
And I picked up my phone and I started Googling.
and you literally to this day, right now, under oath, you're saying you don't remember that phrase that you used.
Objection.
I'll allow it.
Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that at her,
Do you remember it or do you not, Ms. McCabe? That's a simple question.
that morning, I don't remember specifically what I Googled, but I do know what you've put out to the social media.
How about this? Hoss-Long to die in cold. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah, it's been
Why
everywhere
does that sound so familiar?
because you put it out in social media.
Well, I haven't put anything out in social media.
Why does that sound so familiar? Again, when he starts going fast and they're arguing, it does kind of open that response as to how do I know about it? Because you're plastering it everywhere. And he says, I don't even have social media. And this is when, again, wrestling in the mud or whatever one-liner I butchered before. But this is, again, feeling like that.
Does that sound familiar?
Yeah, it's been
Why
everywhere
does that sound so familiar?
because you put it out in social media.
Well, I haven't put anything out in social media because I don't personally have social media.
I'm sorry, Turtle Boy did.
So if the world happens to know it,
Mhm.
that's not on me.
I guess not.
I guess not.
So she says Turtle Boy did it, who is the journalist, blogger, person that was not allowed to be in the courtroom with some witnesses because they felt like they were in fear. So now that name is out there. And to me, if I'm the Commonwealth, I don't want this case to be about the McCabe's or the Alberts or Turtle Boy or anybody else. I want this to be about Karen Read and John O'Keefe. That's what you want this case to hear about or be about. That's what you want this jury to hear over and over again is how it's Karen Read who did this to the victim, John O'Keefe. So all these other characters and names, I don't think is good for the Commonwealth. Jennifer said, do you think the feds are in the courtroom? There's probably somebody there, I would think, representing them or in contact with them or, in the case with them. Michelle, you're saying it possibly not be good for Karen Read, and Karen Read is not responsible for the public. How does it come in? Isn't it prejudicial? So if the reason she went to Proctor's house is because of the harassment and you ask, why'd you go to Proctor's house? And you're inferring it's because of a cover-up and she has another legitimate reason to be there, you're opening the door to allow her to say that. So that's where I think the defense potentially got into the mix. Before that, I really don't think asking about the other proceeding or things like that really opened the door to it. And how do you know about that text? potentially, if she wants to say the reason I know about that text is because Turtle Boy or bloggers or whatever, that's technically opening the door. But again, if I'm a juror, I'm thinking, well, I think you would know about it since you are the one who Googled it. So again, it would make me side eye a little bit.
Hoslong to die in cold is what you put in to the Google search, right?
If you say so.
Is there a reason that you don't want to admit to that?
Absolutely not.
It's a simple question, right?
No reason.
So say it. What Google search did you use?
Objection.
Sustained.
It's like he just wants her to say it and she refuses to say it. I don't know. If I'm a juror right now, I'm like, do these two know each other? That's what I'd be thinking. Everybody seems to know each other in this trial.
You were seeking at some point to Google how long to die in the cold, correct?
Correct.
And you made a mistake and mistakenly typed Hoslong to die in cold, correct?
You could show me it. I'd appreciate it.
You later
I
Google
honestly
searched-
think she thinks that makes her look like smart and like she's getting one over on him. But to me, and again, maybe these jurors have never watched a trial, but if it's your life and you did this stuff and you've already testified to this stuff and they already know you've testified multiple times and give multiple interviews, I think you would remember this stuff and just answer the question like you did, especially when you don't ask the prosecutor once to show you something. Show me that and I'll understand. Like she didn't ask the prosecutor that, which again, preparation, things, where do jurors' minds go when they start comparing direct to cross? And jurors have done that in interviews we've watched and interviews in my own cases. They notice when a witness is completely different on direct than they are on cross.
searched. May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes. Yes.
I have it. But I have this marked as next in order.
Jim?
All right, here we go. The Google searches we've been waiting for. We heard about in the beginning that I was like, oh boy, did this actually happen? A lot of people told me, no. There's no way that, this is right, or just wait and see. And this is our first step. Now, somebody else said in the comments that I wanted to bring up now. Where is it? Somebody said something about, I can't wait for the experts to testify. I'll get to it eventually, but me neither. I really can't. Oh, here we go. Margaret said, Jen's behavior alone destroyed her credibility, in my opinion. She very clearly came with a story to tell, and truth be damned. She argues with Cellbrite data and police reports. I'm ready for the tech experts. So am I. And oh boy, did I never think I would say that.
Does this appear to be the document that was just marked as Exhibit 99?
Yes.
I know it's a little bit small. You see this column,
Yes.
third column from the fourth column from the left, some dates, some data, and then a Google search, correct?
Correct.
What does that Google search say?
House long to die in cold.
Now, you indicate that you made that search at 6:23 a.m., correct?
Correct.
And then you indicated that you did it again thereafter at 6:24, correct?
Correct.
At 6:24, you misspelled the phrase and you spelled it as follows: how long TI die in CIKD, correct?
Correct.
So let me just take a quick second. And if anybody gets confused at this part, I got a little confused as they were doing it. But here's why I believe, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, as you've done, the people that know a lot about this case already. They're about to go through all the different times she texted this. The first time she texted it, it's the HOS, has long to die in the cold. That was at 2:27 a.m., according to the defense in this Cellbrite record. Let's be real. And Terry just said, no disrespect, Peter, be real. Take yourself out of the lawyer seat. That's impossible, right? I don't think that would be honest of me because that's how I look at it. But I'm also a person, and lawyers can technically sit on juries. But I think the point of what I'm explaining is because I am a lawyer. But the reason they're showing all these differences is because they're saying, the defense, that the Hoslong to die in the cold at 2:27 was the legitimate search during the cover-up. And then these other searches were to cover up the cover-up. And she tried to do the same typos at 6 whatever in the morning. And it didn't work the first time because she had different typos. So when she went back and saw what she Googled, she went and then Googled the same misspelling, Hoslong to die in the cold, for the second 6 a.m. Google search. And then to prove that she was trying to cover up, she deleted the 227, the first How Long to Die in the Cold, 2:27 a.m. Google search. That's what the defense is trying to show with all these different searches, that she tried to do the same typo in a later search to say it was something she searched after Karen Read asked her and not during this alleged cover-up. What the state is saying is that she searched it at 6:27, and I think they're going to have an expert testify that if you're just in Safari, sometimes the timing is wrong. Clearly, it was 6:27, not 2:27. She was searching the basketball stuff. She didn't search this till later, but the timing was messed up because Safari was already open on her phone, and when she came in, it automatically reloaded the page, something like that. Something like that. So let's continue to listen and see how it comes out into evidence in front of the jury. And maybe I'm wrong, and you guys can tell me if you see it a different way.
Now you claim that those two searches were at 6:23 and 6:24 a.m. respectively, correct?
Objection.
Phrase it differently.
Sure. You've indicated under direct examination that these two searches were at 6:23 and 6:24 a.m., right?
I don't know if I gave exact times, but I said it was in the morning and Karen had asked me to do it.
And you claim that you searched it because Karen was screaming at you and yelling at you, Google hypothermia, and you Googled how long does it take for a person to die? I'm sorry, she said something like, how long does it take for a person to die of hypothermia? And you Google searched it at 6:23 and 6:24. Is that right?
Again, I'm not sure about the exact times. I just did it after Karen asked me to do it.
Would you quarrel with the idea that those were about 30 seconds apart?
Okay.
And you're aware, Ms. McCabe, that both misspellings of that phrase result in the exact same search results, don't they?
I'm not aware of that, no.
Well, you Googled them, ma'am. You're looking on your phone and you Googled how long to die in cold and how long to die in CIKD. Both of those. You Googled them, right?
I did, yes.
And they result in the exact same search results, don't they?
I have no idea.
So my question to you is,
So I'm guessing that that's something we're going to hear from an expert, that it's the exact same search results. So why would you do it twice, I think is what he's saying. She's saying, I didn't really, and I don't know, and et cetera, et cetera. Stars always said, Peter, wasn't the presentation of the 227 search not very effective? Like the mouse was covering it and not a lot of emphasis. I think they did emphasize it, but I do understand what you're saying. It was a little bit confusing, but by the end of it, I was able to put it all together. I may be a little bit slow, but we got to realize the jury didn't necessarily know exactly how it was going to be presented. Like a lot of people in this chat knew exactly how it was going to be presented. So did it hit? My guess is this is not the last we're going to hear of it. But she definitely argued against it. She definitely said she didn't search it at 227, only searched it after Karen Read asked her to.
two searches.
She was standing next to me screaming, shaking my hand. My hand was cold. I was trying to Google it. Obviously, maybe whatever came up first didn't make sense because I had some misspellings. So I did it again.
So how long to die in cold results in articles concerning dying of exposure, doesn't it?
We never got the chance to read it.
Well, you're the one, when you say we, who's we?
Karen and myself.
He's saying you didn't need to search it again for different results. You needed to search it again to get the right typo in there. That's what he's arguing.
The one holding the phone, Mr. K.
Correct.
So you're looking down at your phone and you see exactly what comes up, right?
I don't remember exactly what came up.
Well, what came up was something about dying of hypothermia, didn't it?
That's what she asked.
So why do it again? Why do it again, Mr. K? You had the result. Why the second search?
I cannot answer that beyond telling you that my hands were frozen. She was shaking me and screaming at me.
But that doesn't make sense because if you wanted to get an answer on Google and I type in what time is the Mavs game and I type it in MAYS and it comes up with the time of the Mavs game, why do I need to search it again? Especially with the same typo I had a different time, right?
You see the time, let me scroll up, please. According to the Cellbrite data, you see this first search that says how long to die in cold?
I do.
What's that time?
You've got the, it's right over at 2:27
AM or PM?
a.m.
Ms. McCabe,
I think they were purposely covering up the time because they haven't made many tech mistakes and there's like 7 people there working with them. I don't think they covered it up by accident. I think they covered it up for an aha moment, but I kind of agree with you. I would have liked to have a longer time with it just like this the whole time. We do get some time to look at it and they do highlight it very clearly that it was at 2:27 first time she searched how long to die in the cold. And then I didn't even realize I thought before the argument was going to be, no, It wasn't 227. The records are wrong. It was actually 623. From opening statements, that's what I thought the argument was going to be. The fact that she did it twice and had to do it double time to get the right typo, that's why I felt personally this was the single worst piece of evidence for the Commonwealth to prove that Karen Read did this and that there wasn't some kind of weird involvement with other people there that seemingly knew John O'Keefe or somebody was lying outside in the cold at 2:27 a.m. It's hard for me to believe that there was a cover-up with this many people. I got to be honest, and I've said that from the jump. This many law enforcement officers, I don't know if the first responders, the kids, parents, friends, people that know each other, people that aren't even that good of friends. It's more plausible if there is some kind of cover-up that it's less people than we think. But this is very hard for me to get over. Does this prove beyond a reasonable doubt that it's the McCabe's or the Alberts? No way. But this is going to be a huge reasonable doubt that I think is going to be difficult for the Commonwealth to get over. If I'm just being honest and I'm legally analyzing this case. And if you want to yell at me and get mad at me, okay, that's fine. I'm just telling you how I'm looking at evidence and testimony that comes in. I really do want to hear from the experts, because if the state has experts to say, no, there's a reason UTC -5 actually means that it's, this time because the way it's put into here is very important. Fine. I'm willing to be open and listen to that. Absolutely. And it could be overcome. I think it could be overcome. I just think it's going to be very difficult.
You made that search at 2:27 a.m. because you knew that John O'Keefe was outside in your sister's lawn dying in the cold, didn't you?
Absolutely not. I did not make that search at that time.
You
No.
realized the next morning, after John was discovered, after 6 a.m., that you had an incriminating search on your phone, didn't you?
Absolutely not.
To cover your tracks, you searched it again in order to overwrite the original search at 2:27, correct?
Again, absolutely not.
But you were nervous and you screwed it up. So the first search you made at 6:23 was Hustlong to die in CIKD, wasn't it?
No.
When you see the search right there, correct?
I see the search, but I disagree with your narrative.
And what's the time frame of that search?
623.
And you agree that that time frame is accurate, right?
Again, it's what the report says.
And that comports with your memory of that morning, about 6:23 in the morning, 51 seconds.
Correct.
There's a second search, correct?
Correct.
And this one, at 6:24, says Hustlong to die in cold. 6:24:16, correct?
Correct.
I'm sorry, 18. That was okay, great. And that comports with your memory as well.
I remember Googling it at the request of the defendant. Yes.
About 27 seconds apart, correct?
Yes.
But the reality is, your first search didn't comport with the 2:27 a.m. search, did it? It was a different spelling, wasn't it?
I never searched a 227. That is not reality.
But the 6:24 search did exactly mirror the search that, according to this report, took place at 2:27, correct?
I'm sure Celebrite will be able to explain it to you. I can't.
And then of those three searches, one of them ended up deleted. Isn't that right?
I never deleted any search.
And I mean, that was kind of an aha moment too. It's like, you had three searches. One of them gets deleted. Which one do we think gets deleted? The one the defense is trying to point to as a cover-up. Now, I'll just tell you, defense attorneys make all kinds of arguments, and it's not their job to prosecute the McCabe's or the Alberts. It's not their job. That's a prosecutor's job. So in having narratives and pointing out these inconsistencies and these problems, if it creates reasonable doubt and shows that the Commonwealth does not have enough evidence to prove Karen Read is guilty, that's their job. People don't like it, but people shouldn't go to prison unless prosecuting attorneys have enough evidence to prove that the person sitting in that chair should go to prison for the rest of their life in this situation. And if they can't get over stuff like this and they don't know why stuff like this happened, then the other person sitting in the chair should not go to prison for the rest of their life, regardless of how you feel about them. Even if people say things like, I just have a feeling they're guilty, that's not enough in America, nor should it be. Because as we've seen here, at least, the wrong person gets the wrong feeling and a lot of people could get hurt.
Take a look at the Celebrite report. Top search. The column marks deleted. What do you see?
I see a yes.
So out of this whole page we're looking at, only the 2:27 a.m. on 129 was deleted. She didn't even delete the first one where she typed it wrong. I guess that would have been, one step above trying to cover it up, is delete the wrong typo. So if I was her, maybe she'd respond, if I was trying to cover this up, why didn't I delete that one? Right? I think that would have been an interesting point. Maybe I'm just thinking out loud.
Mr. McCabe, the reason you deleted that 2:27 a.m. call because you realized that if you were caught Googling how long it takes for a person to die in the cold 3.5 hours before John's body was found, that would incriminate you.
Objection.
The objection sustained.
Did you delete that search because you knew that you would be implicated in John O'Keefe's death if that search was found on your phone?
Objection.
Could you answer that, please?
I did not delete that search. I never made that search at 2:23. I never would have left John O'Keefe out in the cold to die because he was my friend that I loved.
But he's not your family, is he?
Family and friends.
Is he not
Objection.
your-
Sustained.
You acknowledge that you made the search at 6:23, don't you?
In the morning, I did, yes.
You acknowledge that you made the search at 6:24.
Multiple times in the morning, yes.
Of the 3 searches that show up that were all found on your phone, the one that you disavow is the one that took place at 2:27 a.m., which would implicate you and exonerate my client, correct?
Objection.
Sustained. Can I ask it differently, Mr. Jackson?
Of those 3 searches, there was only one marked deleted. Isn't that right?
Correct.
That was the one at 2:27 a.m., correct?
I wouldn't even know how to go in and delete a
That's not
search.
what I asked you. The one according to the Celebrite report that was deleted, the one at 2:27 a.m., correct?
Correct.
You would agree that that's awfully convenient for you, isn't it?
Objection.
Sustained.
So I have it on tape.
Okay, Mr. Lally?
Thank you.
All right. So that ended the cross examination. Then Lally jumps up in redirect. And like the first question he asks is, Life 360, how accurate is it? And she's like, pretty accurate. I was like, what? That's not what you wanted her to say, is it? And then he's like, but you've seen it's wrong, been wrong from time to time, right? And she says, yes. He asks a little bit about the Nagel's truck. It's actually Ricky's. It seemed to me the beginning of this redirect that they were not really on the same page. Maybe they weren't as prepared as direct because she was trying to figure out where Lally was going a few times. And I don't think she kind of knew. And so he would kind of have to change the way he's asking questions. But he confirmed she wasn't paying attention to the lawn. It was dark and snowy. He confirms that she doesn't know how cell phone stuff works. And I thought that this was a little bit, I think this was a decent job of Lally trying to rehab her a bit on not ever telling anybody the I hit him quote. The defense was kind of saying it was really in like the early on in interviews with police, but Lally at least says, here's a prior statement where you did say that, right? Giving her a little more credibility. I thought that was effective. Let's take a listen to that.
I told them that Karen looked straight at me and said, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. And I said that there was, I believe, an EMT that overheard as well.
Now, do you recall in that same prior proceeding being asked any questions sort of at different times, the defendant saying different iterations of that same statement?
Objection.
Sustained as to form. No leading, Mr. Lally.
With respect to that that's testimony in that same prior proceeding, what, if anything else, were you asked about statements the defendant made to you that morning?
I was asked what were some of the statements that Miss Reed had made. And it was like, repeat, did I hit him? Could I have hit him? Is he dead? Is he dead? Is he dead? Could I have hit him? Did I hit him? I have a cracked taillight. And then her, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him.
And so with respect to questions and as far as did I hit him or could I have hit him and the statement I hit him, those were at different times, correct?
Correct.
Now, you met with Trooper Proctor on January 29th, is that correct?
Correct.
Was that the first time that you had met him?
Correct.
Who, if anyone, was with him when you met?
I believe it was Trooper Yuri.
And subsequent to that date, did you meet with other troopers?
Yes.
And by other troopers, I mean not Trooper Proctor and not Trooper Yuri.
Yes.
And with respect to meeting with other troopers, was it at that point that they had talked to you about taking your phone?
Correct.
And they asked you for your phone, is that correct?
I had shared my Life 360 and my Life 360 in my texts, and they asked if they could take a copy of my phone.
And did you agree to that?
I agreed to it. Yes.
Were you presented a form at all?
And so it's like, yeah, you agreed to it, but there is some weird stuff going on here, right? There's butt dials, there's deleted calls, there's Google searches at the wrong time, there's deleted Google searches. So like the fact that you just turned it over and then said everything in the report, the Cellbrite report was wrong, it's not matching up to me, for what I think she's trying to do with the, I turned it over type of thing. And then we get to the statement of what Carrie Roberts said. Kind of been waiting for it. Here it is.
Horrified you in some way, is that correct?
From Miss Roberts?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. What was that? What was she talking about?
Objection.
The door's been opened, Mr. Jackson. That means you can answer.
So here's another one. What is it that Carrie Roberts said that horrified you? Objection. Hearsay, maybe it's not really used for the truth of the matter. It's definitely more prejudicial than probative. It doesn't prove a thing. So this, I have no clue how this came in. And who opened the door to this? The only person asking her about Carrie Roberts saying something about Karen Reed and John O'Keefe's relationship has been Lally, right? Did I miss it when the defense really dug into this and opened the door to what Carrie Roberts actually said? I mean, I feel like Lally opened his own door again, and now we're going to get another damning statement, potentially. Maybe people don't think it's a big deal. I don't think it's a good thing for Karen Reed that somebody thinks this of her.
So basically, Carrie is a talker. And once she started,
I think just focus on
Okay.
what she said.
okay, she said something like, John really loved Amy. And in my eyes, Karen was just a babysitter with benefits.
Whoa, like that's rough. And, you know, if people were talking about her like that, if she heard John said something like that about her, does that give her motive? You know, I think that's what the Commonwealth is trying to do. I don't get how that comes in. Honestly, I don't. I don't get how that comes in. But it came in. Then Lally's going to say, we want to talk more about harassment. So let's hear more about harassment, because I have a couple more thoughts I didn't give on the last time that I'm going to talk about at the end of this comment.
Certain incidents of harassment that you had undergone, as well as Mrs. Proctor, is that correct?
Correct.
How long had that been going on at that point?
At that point, it started in April, and now I believe I went over there in September.
And what, if anything, was the frequency of the harassment? Was it sporadic, or how often were you experiencing that?
Daily, sometimes hourly.
And in addition to what you've already testified, what, if any, other incidents do you recall specifically involving either you or your children or your home?
A secondary issue that the door has been open to, it's not necessary to then triple back down on it and ask, what, if anything else, do you want to talk about with harassment, legally speaking, right? If it came out, the door was open, it's relevant to a line of questioning, fine. If the judge believes the door was open, whether we agree with it or not, I get it. But that is really weird to just now let the lawyers go, okay, door's open, so let's just go ahead and talk about it even more. Somebody said, BNB said, I'm so confused with all these open doors. Can we close some of them? Once it's open, you can't necessarily close it, but it doesn't mean it should become a trial within a trial where now every witness gets to testify about the harassment. Seriously, thanks for your insight, but also, what are these doors? So legally speaking, when something that was not relevant or not admissible at some point or at the beginning of trial, but then the adverse side does something to make it now relevant or necessary as part of the trial, meaning you can't use it as a sword and a shield, right? You can't say, Fifth Amendment privilege, I'm not going to do cross-examination, but I'll waive the Fifth Amendment for direct. It's a full go now. You can't use things as a sword and shield. When we're done with her testimony, I'm going to burn through a bunch of questions, because a lot of good ones coming in.
People come by my house, they take video, they scream. They've gone to my child's sporting events and called me names. They've written letters to my daughter's colleges and said that they shouldn't allow them to play. And then they've attached these horrific articles that have been complete lies about all of us. They send me Facebook messages. They call my phone, home phone and cell phone, all hours of the night. They tell me to kill myself. They tell me I'm a terrible mother. They harass my children. My daughter testified here the other day. We didn't even get out of the building, and people were, saying horrendous things, that she's a liar. Your mother should die. It's just.
I mean, if that's true, that sucks. That sucks. It really sucks. We sit here and we preach and believe innocent until proven guilty. These people, all of them, are presumed innocent. Even criminal defendants have been arrested. So to convict these people and treat them like this, even if you believe they did something, and I know people really believe they did something, but just like anybody else that's been accused, even arrested or on trial for a crime, I'm not going to treat them like this, or even treat them like a criminal, or say that they've done this without it actually coming out in court and being proven. They're not guilty until a jury finds them guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. And that's why I think this sucks too. If this actually is true and happening, I don't know that it is, but if it is, that sucks.
It's unimaginable what my entire family is going through. I go to the beach, they take pictures, they post it, they threaten that there are eyes everywhere. I'll never be able to live a normal life again. I am a witness. That's all I am. I am not on trial. I am a witness. And these people are terrorizing me.
Sustained as to that part. I'll strike that part.
Yeah,
of it
that's
out.
why you don't let it in, Judge. Like that, none of that was relevant. All it is sympathy, which is not supposed to come in at trial. Like that really should not come in. No door to that really can be open, in my opinion.
Sustained.
And so, your understanding that Mrs. Proctor had sustained similar issues as you had.
Correct.
Now, again, Trooper Michael Proctor never met him prior to January 29, 2022, correct?
I have never met him prior. No,
And the time that you went over to meet with Elizabeth Proctor, was Trooper Michael Proctor home at that time?
no, he was not home.
And have you ever been over to his house prior to that or any time subsequent?
No, never.
Now, you did have some conversations with Trooper Proctor following this day and around let me ask you this. You testified a bit about a rolling round. Is that correct?
Correct.
Can you describe to the jury sort of what that was or what occurred on that?
So that day in July, a group got together under one blogger, and they all met and they decided to go to different houses. So Michael Proctor had been made aware of what.
I'm going to jump to recross here now for a second to hear Alan Jackson again. He goes through all these statements that police officers said in their reports, again, to try to rehash something that I think Lally did an okay job of rehabbing, showing her that her statement was in another report prior. And he goes through all these statements and is like, is that another place where officers got it wrong? And then once again, we go back into harassment.
One moment, John.
Yes.
He gave a statement on January 29th to Sergeant Light. Called him over to specifically give him a statement, correct?
Correct.
Gave a statement the next day, later that day, Trooper Proctor, correct?
Correct.
You were also met with, on that following Tuesday, with a trooper named Prince, correct?
Correct.
And then you testified in April of 2022, no fewer than 12 times about statements that you attributed to Ms. Reed, correct?
Correct.
And in not one of those instances, not one, is there a report that says you said, she said, I hit it, correct?
Correct. Although I told Mike Lank.
Oh, we already know that the officers all got it wrong.
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained as to that. Next question, please, Mr. Jackson.
So you indicate that you were, the harassment that you just described, this terrible harassment that you just described, started in about April 2023, correct?
Correct.
That was around the time that there were public hearings concerning this Google search, is that right?
Objection.
I'll allow that.
Is that right?
I'm not sure exactly when the Google search came out.
But you do.
So this is interesting. And Caitlin says, Lally asking more about the harassment was a misstep, in my opinion, gave Jackson the opportunity to clarify some interesting timing regarding the I hit him statement. I agree. This to me removed a lot of the sting of the harassment. Because as other people have already pointed out, do we want the jury to feel pressure to give a not guilty verdict? No, not for the Commonwealth. Do we want the jury to think that the public thinks these people were behind it, not Karen Reed? Not if you're the Commonwealth. And then lastly, do they want to think you reacted or are retaliating with your testimony or adding facts because of this harassment? And the answer is no, but that's exactly what Jackson's about to do with this timeline. Just Jamie said, is it me or is the pace of this trial painful? Makes me wonder how long will this thing go on? Yeah, I don't know. It's a very strange schedule. I did not know there wasn't going to be court tomorrow, but we'll have stuff to talk about. Don't worry.
You know that you started suffering this harassment that you claimed is awful and terrible, et cetera, around April of 2023. Is that right?
I didn't claim it's awful. It is awful.
Okay, I'm sure it is awful, Mr. Kate. I'm sure it's terrible.
It
I'm
is.
sure it sucks to be harassed.
It really does.
Yeah, I'm sure it does.
Objection, Your Honor.
All right. So that's the
It makes me uncomfortable a little bit. It's like, yeah, it sucks. Yeah, it really does. She's like, yeah, it does. It's like, yeah. Like, okay, all right. Where are we going with this?
sustained, and I'll strike it. Go ahead and ask a question, Mr. Jackson.
You were upset by April of 2023 that there was public outrage about your family being involved in the death of John O'Keefe. That's what you were upset about, correct?
I was upset that we as witnesses were being harassed.
You were upset about public outrage concerning this case, correct?
Objection.
Sustained, that was answered. Next question.
And 2 months later, in June of 2023, for the first time, you testified at another proceeding and lo and behold, you attributed the words, I hit him, to my client, right?
Objection.
So ask that without the objectionable phrase.
2 months later, at another proceeding, in June of 2023, you attributed the statement, I hit him, to my client for the first time under oath, correct?
Under oath, correct.
You indicated when you turned your phone in, the police were perfectly okay with you deleting communications with your children, correct?
Correct.
He didn't ask this on cross. I don't know if he forgot, but it was a question we talked about a lot on her direct. And it's like, but Allie became involved. So it's kind of strange that they would let you delete the texts.
Including Allie, who's a material witness in this trial.
Objection.
So part of that is objectionable, and I'll sustain that. So
You're aware that your daughter Allie was a witness in this case.
At the time, I was not aware of that. No.
No, but you did know that ultimately she was going to indicate that she drove Colin home, correct? You knew that at the time.
that's sustained.
Did you know at the time Allie had driven Colin home, or she said she drove him home?
I had no idea she drove him home.
But you deleted all those communications with Allie, didn't you?
Objection.
Sustained.
Did you delete all the communications that you had off your phone with Allie, your daughter?
Objection.
So this is
We
already,
don't know what we don't know, which is why we don't delete stuff off evidence. But if it's not relevant, it doesn't come in. Like whatever she said to her daughters would not have come in if it wasn't relevant or admissible.
give an answer, but go ahead, finish. Let's finish this loop. Did you delete them?
I deleted the conversations with my 4 daughters. At that time, Allie was not a witness.
All I asked you, you heard my
But
question.
that's the whole point of like the anticipation of litigation. There's open litigation going on right now, which is why you shouldn't destroy anything that even might be evidence.
Did you or did you not delete the communications with Allie?
Objection.
That's been answered.
You said that there was this statement that horrified you, your words, horrified you, that Carrie Roberts made during her interview that you were eavesdropping on.
And he said you followed it up with, I love it. But then when they actually read it, she said, I love it before, this girl talks so much she could write a book. But it definitely didn't seem like she was horrified throughout the text. But the defense was wrong in that little like impeachment trial, which is why you got to be careful. I don't think it was a big deal or some big misstep. But technically, she did say the I love it part before. She said, she said whatever was horrifying. And then another spat to end recross between Alan Jackson and Jen McCabe.
Was to look for him, correct?
She directed us to go to 34
No.
Fairview.
The whole point of the trip was to look for John,
At
correct?
34 Fairview, where Karen said to go.
And your testimony is that if it hadn't been for Karen jumping out of that truck, you wouldn't have stopped, correct?
Because I wouldn't have seen him. I didn't know he was there. She did.
Yes or no? Was that your statement? If she hadn't gotten out of the car, you wouldn't have stopped.
I don't believe it was stated like that. I believe there was a question and I answered.
And the question was, would you have stopped? And your answer was what?
What was the direct
Oh my
question?
goodness, Mr. Gabe, it was 5 minutes ago.
Did he ask, did you see something? You like to change words. I just want to be certain.
So Mr. Jackson, just keep it to questions, not comments.
You were asked just a second.
My gosh, Miss McCabe, you were asked 5 minutes ago. Lally, I think, had like kind of a quiet objection. They argue back and forth. She says you like to change words. I don't know if a jury loves this either way. I don't know. This cross, this was a really heated cross. I'm not sure how the jury feels. How do you guys think? Like, do you think just home run, Karen Reed's team crushed it, or Jen McCabe is so reliable? Or do you think there were some pluses and minuses on both sides? Overwhelmingly, I think it was a positive cross for Karen Reed. But I think there were parts where the jury probably cringed a little bit.
By Mr. Lally, if Karen Reed hadn't jumped out of the car, you wouldn't have stopped, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, Ms. McCabe, we are finished. Jurors, I'm going to ask you to follow them out like you've done. We'll take a recess. And
It seemed like the judge was happy to get that one over with too after it spanned so long. So before we get to Carrie Roberts, who's going to be the last witness that we do today, I am going to run through and answer a bunch of questions right now. Make sure you guys hit the like button. 12,000 people in the chat is awesome. The last video, I think we got like 14,000 views, which is our biggest ever. So everybody hit that like button. Let's see what we can get to in tonight's video. And make sure you subscribe if you guys have not already. Melissa, the standard the Commonwealth has is beyond a reasonable doubt. But today, Jen was on the stand casting doubt on the investigation/investigators. It seems like for all the snark and vitriol, that is all that will matter for the jury. As far as this witness goes, that could be all that matters, and her credibility could potentially create a reasonable doubt. John, one of your leading beginning quotes for starting your channel is how to trust a lawyer or a lawyer know who you trust. I would never trust Alan Jackson, but Alan Jackson is fantastic at twisting words. His performance is savage. I don't like it. Too strong. I think it's definitely strong. It's definitely aggressive. And I think some jurors will love it. I have loved it at times. I thought he is absolutely crushing certain times. I do think there are certain times where maybe it's like, and he even said, you know, in one of his questions, like, I shouldn't ask it like that. Let me ask it a different way. And he corrected himself. So I do think he feels himself when he pushes a little too far. I think it's possible jurors could be on either side of the spectrum on this one. Jason, why go to the proctors? Why not to the police station? She didn't go to the proctors to ask for help with the harassment. She went to the proctors to commiserate because they both were feeling the harassment. That's what I took her testimony to mean. Allie, first time caller here. I came into this trial knowing just about as much as a juror. This witness has moved the needle for me. In which direction, Allie? Maggie, can witnesses on the stand go to jail for lying? And if so, when would that happen? Then or later? Just curious. Thanks a bunch. They could go to jail for perjury. It would be later. They'd have to be charged with it. It'd be its own criminal case, and the state would have to prove it. Of course, your acquaintance, not your friend. Great coverage. Mass resident, appreciate your impartial analysis. I think jurors will take the Google search as the most memorable part of the day, maybe the trial. And when you have all this he said, she said, and people were hammering me, just wait till you, it was funny. Both sides were saying, wait till you hear the expert testimony. It's going to change your mind. That's what people were saying. And I'm like, I want to hear the expert testimony. I really do. But again, as a lawyer and also a normal person, I'm not a tech genius. I know it's hard to fake this stuff. It's hard to outsmart the Cellbrite program. If it shows you Googled something and deleted it, or that calls were made and answered, it could be wrong, but could it be this wrong this many times? As a normal person, by the way, just because an expert says something, a jury does not have to find it credible. A jury does not have to agree with an expert, and in most trials, they don't agree with at least one expert, right? So what they think about it with their own experiences and knowledge about this or lack thereof could mean a lot. June, should he have let her attacking the defense by not answering his questions, but pushing her agenda? The judge said the door was open. So, I mean, theoretically, she was going to let her testify about it. Anna, will the expert be able to tell if she clicked through and read any answers after searching those questions? I think so, but I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. Leah M, 3,000 pages of documents from the U.S. Attorney's Office for Massachusetts turned over. U.S. FBI also specifically confirms that the search was made on McCabe's phone and it was made on or before 2/27. Alan Jackson said that. Well, I want to hear it in this trial. I want to hear it come in as reliable evidence, and then we can start talking about it, because I don't know. I didn't read that. I'm not saying you're lying. I didn't read that personally. Rebecca, I can honestly tell you as an ER nurse paramedic for 30 years, I'm not sure how this man died. Well, the state's going to need to prove that. They're going to need to prove it was from blunt force trauma from a car, or from hitting the ground, or being left in the cold after being hit by a car. Gigi, but how do they overcome why it was deleted? Well, she said it wasn't deleted, right? She didn't try to give a better reason, because I agree with you. That'd be tough. Why would you delete that? And if you admit deleting it, why did you search it in the first place? Lawyer's daughter, maybe AJ's snark at the harassment wasn't dismissive, but intentional emphasis for use during the defense's case. KR's suffering unimaginable in comparison. Oh, absolutely. I think he's going to use it later. It just went back and forth a lot of times. K. Willis, realtor. Is it possible for some of the visitors at the house didn't know what happened? I think that if there was a cover-up, that has to be the truth. At least some people didn't know what was going on. And even if Karen did hit John O'Keefe in the front yard, I still think the visitors didn't know what was going on. I could be naive, but that's how I see this so far. If he was killed in the basement, maybe they waited for everyone to leave before bringing him outside. I have no idea. Don't cherry pick. I know at the total huge list of BS. I'm not positive what this is referring to. Lorraine, Peter, do we have dash cam that corroborates that Karen Reed screaming a lot at JM to Google? Not that I've seen. Not sure at what time Ellie arrives on scene. JM does say her fingers are freezing, so she's Googling outside, right? She said she went back into the backseat of the car with Karen, I believe, when they told her to kind of go calm Karen down. I don't think anybody else was around when Karen Reed allegedly asked her to Google this. Melanie, doesn't her husband work in IT? I believe Matt McCabe does. Maybe he did all the deleting. I don't know. In your experience, does Cellbrite make mistakes? Maybe some mistakes. More times it's like the UTC and the timing is off or whatever. Rarely does it show things deleted that weren't deleted. they usually don't make huge mistakes. Rebecca, Peter's trying to have us have an open mind. Stop saying he's on one side or the other. He's teaching. And if you think you've learned it all, it's time to move on. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to have an open mind and figure out what's happening in this case too. Did an EMT corroborate? I hit him. Yes. I can't remember if it was an EMT, but at least one first responder did say that she said, I hit him. June, I am neutral here. I have no idea what happened and whether Karen did it. Nobody can know whether she de facto did it. Well, it's not about, knowing de facto, but we'll see if they prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. Lil Bill, I think the Commonwealth severely misordered their witnesses. I agree with you. Could have put Laura and Etta right after John's family, Carrie and then Jen, and where is the forensics? I agree. I think that these witnesses should have been earlier. And I think based on the defense's cross of some of the upcoming witnesses, they might have agreed. Nobody wanted the harassment to come in. The judge decided to allow it. Yeah, but it definitely feels like the Commonwealth wants to talk about it now. Michelle, I'm not understanding how the harassment has anything to do with Karen being guilty or not. I agree, but they're saying it came in because the defense opened the door somehow. Thank a farmer. Did I miss the video of them not looking at the tail light? So there was a video people sent me kind of the side-by-side that didn't seem to line up with what Jen McCabe testified to. Beetle. At this point in the trial, how was John killed? How did he die? And how does the evidence link to Karen? I agree, Beetle. Let's get to that. Sounds like everyone being harassed should be able to empathize with Karen Read. I think the jury will already assume Karen Read was harassed as well. We'll see I kind of think the door might be open to that at this point, right? Michelle, if you were cross-examining, wouldn't you ask, so John's injuries were terrible, correct? Is it reasonable to you that those injuries were all caused by a vehicle and that only had a cracked taillight? So I wouldn't ask these witnesses because only God knows what they'll say. They're also not experts, so that could be objected to. And they were all kind of in shock and things like that. So I don't think I'd ask these witnesses. Brandy, oh my gosh, finally caught alive. Thank you for your recaps. Thanks for being here, Brandy, and everybody else. Allie, second-time caller. Needle move to, there's no way I'd be able to convict someone for life with this many questions currently. Not saying a cover-up, but where there's smoke, there's fire. Well, let's wait because the case is still ongoing, right? Maybe the Commonwealth is going to plug these holes. We'll see. Kathleen, they both have competing forensics. I can hear John and Whitney practicing the mini games we're going to be doing in about 20 to 30 minutes on our members only live, literally in the room next door. They both have competing forensic and digital experts. So how does the jury decipher competing expert testimony? Which one they find more reliable? Or I've literally had juries tell me, and it just makes me want to puke with how much money is spent on these experts, that during my trials, they threw out all the experts and they just based it on the clients, the parties. Who did they believe more, the plaintiff or the defendant? So I don't know the answer. Colleen, JM is very angry and wants KR guilty. Could Alan Jackson be trying to show her bias and hatred? Potentially. David Reese, you missed the part on redirect. I missed a lot of parts, right? It's like 7 hours of testimony. I try to get as much in to an hour to an hour and a half as I possibly can. So I'm always going to miss things. I do understand that. If she turned off her phone after she made the Google searches and she said yes, how did she hear Reed's call at 5:50? Yeah. Does anyone remember if Carrie testified to Karen Read asking for the Google search? I do not remember her testifying to that. I don't. Lisa T, is it possible that Karen Read did leave John O'Keefe at the waterfall? Do we know if Karen Read's car was ever really at Fairview House? Seems Jen is the one who says it was at Fairview. Multiple people have said they saw her car outside Fairview or a car matching her description. And the Nagel truck said they saw a male and a female in the car. That's really all we have so far. But I don't know how he would be left at the waterfall without any of the cameras picking him up, right? And at some point he got to their house. So, and I mean, they have John O'Keefe's cell phone. So are we going to see his movements? I don't know. That's the point, is there's still a lot to be proven and seen in this case. Joshua, are you able to say which way you're leaning so far? Just curious where you're at with the information provided. Thanks so much, Joshua. It's not abnormal for me, as a lawyer who's prosecuted cases at the state attorney's office and defended cases, to know that at this point in the trial, it's not guilty. The state has not proved it beyond a reasonable doubt. They still have a lot of time to do that, right? They're in the middle of their case, but I cloak the criminal defendant in the presumption of innocence, which is what the law says we have to do. So it's not some, big surprise that I'm not guilty at this point, and I'm not saying the game's over. All right, let's get into some of Carrie Roberts' testimony. She talked about what she was doing earlier that night. And what's important is she was not at the waterfall. She was not at Fairview. She was not with any of these people. She doesn't know who drank and what time anybody left or where the band was. But she does talk to Karen Reed early that morning and has new statements that we haven't heard anybody else testify to, and attributing these statements to Karen Reed.
Correct.
Now, what happened then?
Then I got out of bed and Kurt said, "What was that?" I said, I don't know. Something's happening. And I think I started getting dressed at that point because I don't know if I started getting dressed at that point or after she called back again. I tried to call her, I think a couple times back to be like, what is going on? Finally, she called me back again and she said, I'm afraid John might be dead. He might have gotten hit by a plow. He did not come home last night.
He might have gotten hit by a plow. That's interesting because we've also kind of heard the defense try to add that theory in that maybe he got hit by a snow plow. So I think that's pretty interesting that she would say that. And again, attributing that to Karen Reed, and that's coming out without Karen Reed even having to testify. Melanie, thank you for gifting 20 Lawyer You Know memberships. And I'm about to put up another comment that tells you how to accept gifted memberships because we're having a members only live in about 30 minutes. And it's the one I'm least looking forward to. Hopefully you guys enjoy it, enjoy my embarrassment potentially. And here is how you accept gifted memberships.
I was not supposed to stay in Canton last night and he would never leave Kaylee alone. I think something happened.
Do you recall earlier in the day of the 28th having any communication with either Mr. O'Keefe or Ms. Reed? Do
I did with John. He texted me.
you recall generally what that was about?
My son got into a scuffle with some boy at school and Patrick wasn't in school at the time. I think he went to a doctor's appointment, but Patrick got wind of it. So John was calling to see if my son was okay.
Now, turning back to, again, that morning on the 29th, you called Ms. Reed a couple times. She didn't answer. Is that correct?
Correct.
And at some point she called you back?
Correct.
And about how long was it after that initial phone call that you had when she hung up? How much time elapsed between that call and the next
I
one?
don't know, maybe 5 minutes.
And so when she calls back, she makes those statements to you that you just testified about. And upon her making those statements, what, if anything, was your response?
Then she said she checked Kaylee's phone to see if John had called. And I said, okay, where are you now? And she said, I'm driving. Can I come to your house? Will you drive my car? I don't remember anything from last night. We drank so much. I don't remember anything. And
So we have some, I drank so much I don't remember anything, potential DUI, potential drunkenness, potential drunk driving. Definitely not enough for a DUI in my opinion, just based on this. But I've also kind of been waiting for like somebody to testify to that because everybody else is like, yeah, she seemed fine. Didn't seem like they had that much to drink. Now, a lot of those people were also drinking and driving, so they didn't want to make it sound like everybody was drunk and just got in the car and drove home as all these cops and, you know, people around town. But I don't feel like we've gotten nearly enough to prove how much Karen Reed was drinking or that she was even drunk at all that night.
I said, you need to go home and
At
be with
least we
Kaylee.
got some here with this witness. And again, a lot of people felt like Carrie Roberts was the most credible witness. And I found myself when she would cry, I believed it. And I felt like she was a pretty credible witness. It's very clear that she's friends with people on one side, but I found her to be a pretty credible witness myself. I did.
Remember anything from last night. We drank so much. I don't remember anything. And I said, you need to go home and be with Kaylee if she's there by herself. I'll go look for him or something of that nature. Because I said, you're going to get a DUI. If you were drinking all night last night and you don't remember anything, you shouldn't be driving.
All right, so next question, please.
When you were talking to her on the phone, what, if any, observations did you make of sort of how she was speaking or
She was very frantic and her voice was elevated. She was very frantic.
and the loudness that you were describing during the course of that first phone call, what, if any, observations did you make with respect to that in regard to the second?
Same throughout the rest of the day. It was the same.
So you indicate to her that she needs to go home, is that right?
Correct.
And what, if anything, she said in response to that?
She said, I'm going to come to your house. Will you drive my car? And I said, okay.
And after that, what did you do?
I started getting dressed. I think that's when I was starting getting dressed. And my husband said, where are you going? I said, I don't know. Something happened. John didn't come home. Karen's worried. So I'm going to go help her. And he said, you're not going anywhere. It's a blizzard. And I said, yeah, yes, I am. And I went downstairs. I started the car, cleared it off. And I sat there waiting and she didn't come. So I called.
During the time that you're waiting in the car, do you know about how long period it was that you were waiting in the car?
I would say at least 10 minutes of sitting in the car.
And to that point, as far as when you went outside to the car, what, if anything, did you observe about the weather, and what, if anything, did you do with your car as you were turning it on?
I cleaned the car off. I turned the car on. I got in it.
It was snowing.
And I thought to myself, well, she thinks somebody got hit by a plow or something. I'll see if there's any accidents. So I called the Canton non-emergency line. And I said, have there been any plow accidents? My friend's boyfriend didn't come home. And they said, no, there were no accidents. So then I called Good Samaritan Hospital in Milton to see if anybody had been brought in a car accident. They said no. And then finally, Karen called back.
Before we get to that, just in reference to, at any point in time, did you call Mr. O'Keefe?
Yes.
And when you called Mr. O'Keefe, were you able to speak to Mr. O'Keefe?
No.
You know how many times you called Mr. O'Keefe?
My husband called him, and I think I called him.
And when was that in relation to you going out to your car and clearing?
That was when I was in the house. Karen actually said, "Can you try and call him?"
And you did, and you didn't get an answer.
Correct.
And you know whether or not your husband got an answer?
He did not.
So you go out to the car, you're waiting, and you make a phone call initially to Camden Police. Is that correct?
Yes.
And do you know who you spoke to at Camden Police?
I believe it was Officer Good.
Is that someone that you knew in any way prior to this date of January 29th?
We have mutual friends, but no, I'd never met him.
Now, you call the hospitals, and then at some point after you finish speaking to the hospitals, the defendant then calls you back, correct?
Yes.
And what, if anything, can you describe to the jury, so what was content of that conversation that third time?
She said, I said, "Where are you?" I'm in the car. And she said, "I'm at Jen's house." And I said, "Jen who?" She said, "Jen McCabe. She's going to drive my car." And I said, "Okay, stay there. I'll come to there. We'll follow and we'll drop your car off. We'll just take my car and go look for him." And I drove to Jen's, and I pulled in the driveway behind them. I was still on speakerphone. Jen is driving. Karen's in the passenger seat, and we drove. I said, "Do you remember? Did you look through the house? Could he be passed out somewhere in the house?" She said, I don't know. I didn't look." So I said, "Let's do that. Let's get in the cars. We're not taking two cars. It's a blizzard. We're going to go back to Meadows, and we're going to go look in the house first. He could be passed out behind the couch or on the floor. Who knows?" So we went to the house.
I'm sorry, before you get into that, just as far as directionality and where you're going at this initial stage, you were sort of directing what's going to happen and where you're going to go, correct?
Correct.
Now, you had mentioned,
So, and again, yeah, you can just kind of get a feel that she is really, really sharp on direct. And I even wrote that. I said, really sharp memory on direct. And if she doesn't remember something, she doesn't remember it. She doesn't seem to be reaching to fill gaps. I can't wait to see what her memory is like on cross, is what I was saying in my head. More on that later. She remembered everything about where they searched inside of John O'Keefe's house and who took off their shoes and who didn't. Karen Reed didn't, as if that was a big deal. I didn't think that was that big of a deal myself, but kind of confirms the crack in the taillight stuff, but I'm really waiting for an expert when it comes to that.
now you go look through the home, you don't find Mr. O'Keefe, and what happens?
Then I said, let's go look for him. If he might be walking home, or if you thought he got hit by a plow, let's just, and Jen and Karen wanted to go back to 34 Fairview where they were at. Jen said she saw her pull up.
Jen and Karen. Everybody else said just Karen. Karen wanted to go back. Karen knew exactly where it was. Karen runs right to him. Jen and Karen wanted to go back to 34 Fairview. And also she said earlier that Karen told her she left him at the waterfall. And Jen said, "No, I saw you come to 34 Fairview." And then Karen was like, "Okay, well, that's why we need to go there." So I thought it was kind of interesting. And again, not a 100% say whatever the Commonwealth wants type of witness. I think she was honestly recalling what she remembers from that night. And I think what we're pretty clear on at this point is Karen Reed doesn't seem to really remember exactly what happened. And some stuff is fuzzy about what happened that night.
Up to 34 Fairview the night before. So Karen really wanted to go back there. I was the one that said, "No, let's drop a car off, go to Meadows and look through the house. And then we'll start looking if he's not in the house." So that's what we did. We got in the car and we were going to head back to Jen's sister's house.
And so this conversation, as far as the defendant, as you're testifying, really wanting to go to Fairview, when did that occur in relation to when you got to Mr. O'Keefe's?
On the way from Jen McCabe's house to John's house in the car.
So this is over the Bluetooth as you're driving?
Yes, Karen said I left him at Waterfall, and Jen said, "No, I saw you pull up in front of my sister's."
So it wasn't like Karen was like, "We need to get back to 34 Fairview. We need to get back to 34 Fairview because I know I hit him and left him there," which is where I felt like some of the Commonwealth witnesses were testifying before. And I kind of felt like that was starting to build as part of the Commonwealth's theory of the case. Right? But now I don't feel that way as much. It feels like Karen only thought she needed to go to 34 Fairview because Jen told her, "That's where I saw you." Just really an interesting point, but an important material fact to me, because if she knew exactly where it was, we need to go back there. I know that's where I left him, runs right to him when they get there, as if that's right where she left him, which I think is what the Commonwealth is trying to say. That eats away at that a bit. And it's their own witness.
And so after coming out of Mr. O'Keefe's house, you exit the same way that you entered?
Yes.
Come out the garage door, get into your car?
Yes.
And if you could describe to the jury, sort of where was everybody seated in your car when you did?
I was driving, Karen was in the back seat, and Jen was in the passenger seat.
And as far as Ms. McCabe's sister's house, at the time, did you know where that was or who her sister was or anything like that?
I didn't even know she had a sister.
And, you know about how long a drive or how far a drive or what the route was that you took going from Meadows to?
It's funny too, like Lally will build this witness's credibility, which I think is good, but it's kind of funny to be like, you're building up her credibility as if she doesn't know who these people are. She doesn't know the McCabe's really that well. She doesn't know the Alberts. She doesn't know any law enforcement officers. It's like, yeah, those are all things that make her more credible. What's that say about everybody else, right? That's the point. It's not out of left field why people are scrutinizing some of the connections and potential conflicts that may exist in this case.
Her sister's house.
I think we went main roads because we were looking to see, I mean, I don't know what we were looking for, but we were looking for him. I don't know if we thought he was walking home or if he got hit by a plow. So we went main roads. We pulled out, I think we went Bolivar Street, and then Jen was giving directions because I didn't know where we were going.
And to be clear, Bolivar Street, you're talking about, that's Bolivar.
Yes,
And so then Mr. Cave is then giving you directions as you're driving, correct?
correct.
Now, as you're driving, again, as far as what if anything did you see as far as plows or how were the roads treated at that time? What if anything did you observe reference to that?
It was bad driving. There were plows out, but it was really bad driving.
And the visibility as you were driving from Mr. O'Keefe's house to Ms. McCabe's sister's house, how would you describe the visibility?
It was very poor. It was in the middle of a blizzard.
It was snowing.
Now, when you get to the street, at some point you're directed by Ms. McCabe to Fairview Road, correct?
Correct.
And when you get to Fairview Road, do you recall whether or not you took a left or a right, or how did you come onto Fairview Road?
Off of Chapman Street, I took a right onto Fairview.
You took a right from Chapman onto Fairview.
Correct.
And as you're coming down Fairview Road, what, if anything, did you note or observe as far as the sort of elevation of the roadway?
You go downhill.
You go downhill?
Yes.
This particular area of Canton, obviously you've lived in Canton for several years. Are you somewhat familiar with this area of Canton?
Yeah.
And how is it that you were familiar with the area of Canton prior to this date if you've never been to Mr. Case's house?
The commuter rail is right near there that I would take to work.
Are there any schools in that area as well?
Yes, the John F. Kennedy School.
And you mentioned that your son played baseball, correct?
Yes, and
Ball field.
my son and John's nephew also went to the home daycare across the street from the JFK.
Now, Your Honor, with the court's permission, I would ask to just publish a brief portion of what's been marked as Exhibit 12.
I'm going to jump ahead a little bit.
She kept leaning in between the two seats. I think at some point she was texting in the back seat and then she'd be leaning. She was just frantic the whole morning.
And as far as her screaming, do you recall anything specifically that she was screaming or what any sort of conversation was going on in the car as you were driving?
There was some conversation about a woman I didn't know that was Bella's mom. And she said, Bella's mom never liked me. I think Bella lived near Jen's sister, maybe. I don't know. Some conversation about Bella's mom, and Karen said she didn't like me.
And do you recall where you were in your travels when that topic of conversation came up?
No, I don't recall.
Now, in reference to
Again, that was kind of innocuous, right? It doesn't seem like she was really stretching any more than that lady doesn't like me. Not John was with her last night. I know they're sleeping together. I got him for it. You know, nothing like that. Just that girl doesn't like me or that lady doesn't like me.
that, what, if anything, did you say in regards to any other sort of
Any other what?
following that conversation in regard to Bella's mom, who you didn't know, what, if anything, did you say or introduce into the conversation?
Fairview Road runs along Spring Street, I think it is. Spring Lane. So Spring Lane and Fairview are both off at Chapman Street. And there was a woman he dated that lived on Spring Lane. So when Jen was telling me where her sister's house was, I said, I don't know where Fairview is. And she said, it's near Spring Lane. And I said, oh, where the dance instructor lived. John had once dated a dance instructor. And then Karen said, do you think he could have gone there? Do you think that's where?
So then he used to date a dance instructor, and Karen said, do you think he would have gone there? Again, I feel like she could have really highlighted that and hyped it up and created some hyperbole, like maybe she's banging him or whatever, if Karen would have said something like that, but she didn't. She said, do you think he could be there? Almost sounds like a good thing. Maybe we can find him there. I don't know.
he could have been. No, I was just using it as a reference point. She said it's near Spring Lane. And I knew that the dance instructor lived on Spring Lane.
And just to be clear, when you say the dance instructor, this would be for his niece, Kaylee?
Correct.
And you indicated that the two of them, being Mr. O'Keefe and the dance instructor, dated at some point in the past, right?
Yes.
How long ago was that?
Oh, it was when Kaylee was little. She was probably like 5.
So almost 10 years before this date that you're driving. Now, as you're driving along and driving down Fairview, what is it that you're doing? What, if anything, you observe Mr. Cave doing? Then what, if anything, you observe the defendant?
Well, we were looking for John walking or wherever he may be. So I'm driving and looking on both sides. And I think Jen was looking on both sides. And Karen she would be in the back seat, then she'd be in between us, then she'd be in the back seat, and then in between us.
And as you came down the hill on Fairview, what, if anything, what happened then?
Jen said, my sister's house is right up here. And all of a sudden Karen said, there he is, there he is. Let me the F out of this car. And she started kicking the door
And how was she kicking you?
with her feet. Well, how was she kicking the door?
How hard was she kicking?
Pretty hard. I mean, she wanted to get out of the car, but it was locked because once you start driving, the back door is locked. So I looked over and I didn't see anything. And I looked at Jen and I said, she's crazy. And I unlocked the door and I sat back and watched. And she ran over to a mound of snow.
And so at the time you're driving,
So again, she ran over to a mound of snow. I think this goes with the Commonwealth's theory and argument that Karen Reed knew where John O'Keefe was and ran to him. Doesn't match with what happened earlier. So I don't really know how we connect this, except that Karen Reed was really focused on that house where, Jen McCabe said they knew where it was from last night and saw the blob of snow. I don't know. I'm not positive what it proves, right? What do you guys think it proves?
down the road, have you seen anything, as you're driving down, sort of looking at the side of the road, have you seen anything on your side of the vehicle?
No.
And when you say she gets out of the vehicle, is it your side or passenger side where Mr. Cave is that?
The driver's side.
But she gets out of the driver's side of the vehicle and the back passenger, correct?
Correct.
And how quickly does she go sort of from your car to where she ends up?
She ran over to the mound.
And at that point in time, even when she runs over, could you see what she was running over to?
At some point, I realized it was the shape of her body.
And when was that you realized? When in this sort of sequence were you able to realize that?
That was in seconds. Once she ran over to his body, I said, "Oh my God!" And she lifted up his shirt and started to lay on him.
And everybody's kind of testified to that. She does say there was like 3 to 4 inches of snow on top of him. Breezy, I agree. I felt like her tears were real and John O'Keefe was her friend and she was really sad that he was gone. Like I absolutely got that. I didn't get that she had any personal motivation or, fears or protection. And that could come from nobody's accusing her of anything. And people are accusing other witnesses of things, but it was sad. Diana said EMT said a woman said it, never said it was Karen Reed. I mean, to me, that's pushing a little bit far. I'm pretty confident that the woman he thinks said it is the same woman that anybody else said they heard it. The one woman screaming, "I hit him." Nobody else has said, any other woman matching any other description has said something like that. Leah said the 911 call says he got out of the car. Is that right? Yes. I did find that to be interesting. Be a good human. When you say the jury collectively, example, will the jury believe or discredit the witness? I think it's good to remember that it's up to each juror what they personally choose to believe. Of course, always important to remember that. And that's why I've said if one juror believes this or feels bad about the harassment or doesn't believe that, it's really important. Michelle, if KR is convicted, could the judge allowing this harassment testimony be an issue for appeal? I don't have a handle on what kind of issue can be argued for appeal. Not a lot of issues are very confidently winners on appeal. I think this would be an appellate issue that the defense would make. And I think when it was just just Allie McCabe, not Allie Albert. When it was just Allie McCabe and it was just 5 minutes in a multi-week trial, I think no shot it would have been enough to overturn this verdict. But if they're planning to ask every witness and double and triple down, it becomes a major issue. And if the judge got that call wrong, I do think it's potentially a winner of an appellate issue, but we'll still see how it all turns out. Isn't the 911 call suspicious? Jen doesn't identify her friend by name or the fact that he is police, which would make things way higher priority. I don't know. June said, I wrote de facto because people are arguing if they were there and know exactly what happened. I get what you meant. It's always important for me to try to clarify everything, all right, I'm going to jump ahead. She cried again when she said, she had to clean blood off her hands and things like that. There was really interesting testimony about John O'Keefe's parents. And when she was with them, what did they have to say about what might have happened the night before? It's the first time I think we've heard any comments from them.
Say it again.
Why was it that you had to go clean up?
Because I had blood on my hands.
Now, Ms. Roberts, you mentioned that during part of the drive from Camp to Braintree, you spoke to Ms. Camerano, correct?
Yes.
And during either that drive or the subsequent drive from Braintree to Brockton, who, if anyone else, did you speak to?
And Karen called me repeatedly from the ambulance asking if I was going to come to the hospital. Then she called when the O'Keefes were in the car and said she dropped him off at a party. And Mrs. O'Keefe said, "You just left him." And Mr. O'Keefe said, "Leave her alone. She's been through enough." She called a few times while we were on the ride. And then she called a lot when we were at the hospital asking if I knew anything, if he was dead, is he dead? She would hang up and then call back, hang up and then call back.
And if you know about how many times?
At least 10.
And that same sort of phraseology that she was using on scene as far as death, she repeated that in the phone call to the hospital.
Yes.
Now, once you arrive at the hospital and you're able to clean up a little bit, where did you go from there? What happened?
I went to the chapel and I said a prayer. And then I went in and talked to John's cousin, and she said that Dr. Weiss was going to ask to meet with the family and that they would be told how John was doing and that they would bring John's family back to see John. So when I came out, they were being called in by Dr. Weiss, and I sat in the waiting area.
And after some period of time sitting in the waiting area, what happened?
Mrs. O'Keefe came out and told me John was gone. And then she asked if I wanted to see him. So I did because I figured it would be better than when I last saw him. Maybe he was cleaned up, but it was not. It was worse.
Sorry, man, like, as far as say that it was worse.
I don't know if this is going to become a part of the Commonwealth's theory that like he was worse at the hospital when some people saw him, and it was kind of how things progressed. And maybe that's what their expert reconstructionists and medical experts are going to talk about, how it looked worse like a fight, but probably wasn't at the time of the accident that they're trying to prove happened. I don't know.
Happens to remember where John was, is that right?
Yes.
And what did you see?
He was in a neck brace, and both eyes were huge. Whereas when I found him, it was only one, but they were like black, almost like filled with, I don't know, blood or fluid. They were huge.
Beyond what you observed with the eyes,
Interesting descriptions, obviously, of his injuries.
anything else did you see on John's body as you were
He had scratches on his arm,
recall which arm it was?
his right arm,
Recall where on his arm?
like here.
That's what reflected the witnesses pointing to the forearm.
Yes.
Uh,
So sorry, I don't think I reiterated John's parents. The mom said you just left him, and the dad said she's been through enough. And also we heard that John O'Keefe's mom is the one that told them to make a timeline, which I really don't think is that crazy of a theory that the mom would want them to make a timeline. And then I want to see if I can find the spot. Maybe not.
may we approach this briefly?
Okay.
I have no further questions for this one, Sean.
All right, so that's the end of direct. So now let's get to cross.
Ms. Little?
Good question, John.
Okay. All right.
No questions. No cross. Patty, what are your thoughts on the defense not crossing Carrie Roberts? Jan 1 Rob, why do you think they didn't cross Ms. Roberts? Also, I watch you because you're calm, clear, and fair. It's appreciated. Thank you to both of you for this question. I assumed it was coming. And I saw on Twitter that Karen Reed's defense attorneys were so scared of Carrie Roberts. She is such a credible and great witness. They didn't want to get destroyed by her. I also saw that Carrie Roberts didn't say anything negative at all for Karen Reed's case. Everything was great for Karen Reed's case. And I kind of, not surprisingly, disagree with both of those takes. Number one, there's no way they were scared of this witness. If they wanted to pick certain things apart, I'm sure they could find something that was inconsistent, somebody she knows, some connection, something. I also think the testimony about her being drunk and driving and can't drive anymore because it's a DUI, and the comments about her relationship or other people John might have loved or been with or whatever it may have been was all not good for Karen Reed. She did have some things that were very good for Karen Reed, and we just went through all that and talked about a lot of them on the both sides, good and bad, for the Commonwealth, for Karen Reed. So I don't think that's the reason why. If I had to guess, and these are the notes I wrote kind of at the time, it's clear to me the defense is trying to make a point that they're not even going to cross people who weren't at the waterfall, at Fairview, connected to the McCabe's or Alberts, because they wouldn't know about the conspiracy and the cover-up that the defense is trying to prove. Yes, I know the defense does not have a burden of proof. I know that's how criminal cases work, but they're definitely telling this jury they are going to prove a cover-up, and they are going to show reasonable doubt at the very least. So I think that was kind of the strategic move. Then immediately with the next witness, I was like, oh, I guess I'm wrong when the defense gets up to cross-examine them because they weren't at 34 Fairview or the waterfall either. But we're going to continue that tomorrow when we hit the Aruba witnesses who also have no connections related to the McCabe's or Alberts and weren't at Fairview or the waterfall. What's happened and said, Proctor knowing anything about the Sullivans, which are tomorrow's witnesses, on February 8th should prove someone tipped him off to the potential motive. We're going to dive into that in detail tomorrow. Lawyer, see the truth. Karen Reed is guilty. No, join the cult. I'm not joining any cult. I can promise you that. Never going to happen. Any kind of cult. Michelle, Carrie is credible, although you can see influence from Jen, who has been no doubt telling her the sun shines out of her for the last 2 years. I don't know. Amber C, I know harassment is frowned upon. It's not just frowned upon. It's illegal. It's wrong. I would not just say harassment is just frowned upon. What advice would you give to the public concerns who are ignored by law enforcement district attorney? I think that's a legitimate problem. I hate it. I do think that you can take to social media, you can take to public forums to connect dots, to speak truth, to ask questions, but that's different than putting semen on somebody's face, calling people's names, harassing them, ambushing them, doing stuff with their kids, calling their kids colleges. I do think there are lines, right? And it's hard, but in a society, in a civilized society, I think we need to find where those lines are. Maria, have you seen the dog trainer bite expert with the autopsy photos and compare the timeline when the dog was given away? No, I have not. I'm waiting till that comes out at trial. Lots of questions the state is leaving open thus far. I don't disagree with that. And Marcia D is a member and tons of new members tonight, which is like bittersweet for me because I don't know how this members only live is going to go that we're going to start in the next 8 minutes. So if you guys want to join us over there, we're doing like mini games with me, Whit, who's my wife, and John, who is the producer and runs all the back end stuff for the channel. I'm sure it's going to be stuff I'm terrible at. I'm sure I'm going to lose. They're going to set me up to fail. They've been practicing in there. So anybody who wants to do that, get over there. We're not going to talk much law. We'll answer some questions. It's kind of more chill, more behind the scenes stuff, more just personable stuff. If you guys want to go over there. If not, make sure you subscribe. Subscribing is free. Liking is free. And I love when all your comments come through and all of your questions come through. But that's all I've got for tonight. Lisa Chambers is going to be there. Lady Los Angeles said, I'm worried the jury might get confused by missing facts and the order they were presented. Clear understanding is key to getting a fair verdict. What do you think? I definitely think it could be presented better, but honestly, that's a burden that the state holds, to present evidence in a way that the jury has enough to convict beyond a reasonable doubt. So I appreciate you guys. Make sure you hit that like button. Till next time, I'm out of here. Thanks for watching another episode of The Lawyer You Know. If you enjoyed the episode, please hit the thumbs up and share with your friends who may be interested here on YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe. You can also follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. And don't forget to check out the Lawyer You Know podcast with new seasons dropping every quarter. If you have a case you want to talk to us about, if it's a personal injury case, wrongful death, catastrophic injury, car accident, or slip and fall case, please email us at lawyeryouknow@gmail.com. And of course, all these links I just mentioned are included in the description below on this episode and every episode. So until next time, this is Peter Tragos, The Lawyer You Know.